before I forget. But I will go ahead and Meredith, if you want to kick us off.
Hi, my name is Meredith Myers, and I am the Director of Programs at YPN, formerly Young Parents Network. We are based in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We started serving diverse communities approximately 12 years ago. When the Latino community kind of showed up, we realized there was a big need in Cedar Rapids. I'm sure the community was here long before then, but they just kind of came to our doorstep at that point. And then I would say probably 7 or 8 years ago, we realized that there was a large African refugee population in our community. They showed up to our group programming one night, and we figured out that we needed to see how we could help this group of families. Since that time, we've also brought in families from Haiti and most recently from Afghanistan. So I believe we have 9 different languages spoken within our office.
Great. Thank you and welcome. And Ezzy and Jasmine, I'm not sure who wants to start. I'll let you two decide that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ezzy Monroy from Child Abuse Prevention Services in Marshalltown. And I supervise our 2 long-term home visiting programs here at our agency. I have worked at CAPS for 12 years, and our agency has been serving immigrant and refugees families since long before I came to work here, and continues to serve a lot of immigrant and refugee families. We do have JBS, which is a meat packing plant here in town. So just by the nature of having such a large employer and the type of work that it is, we see quite a variety of different immigrant and refugees in our programs. And I work with Jasmine, who does our crisis programming. So I'll let her talk a little bit about what they are seeing with their programs. But with our home visiting, we have a large population of Latino families, a lot of Southeast Asian refugee families. We also are recently getting some African refugee families. And then I will let Jasmine talk a little bit about what they are seeing with their crisis programming.
Good morning, everyone. I work with Ezzy at CAPS, and I also do a home visiting program. I supervise our Strong Foundations program at CAPS, where we work primarily with families who have been in Marshall County for less than a year. And one of the requirements for our program is for one parent to be foreign born and for them to have children under the age of 18. So we work with a lot of the families that are new to our community. Like as we said, the meatpacking plant here in Marshalltown recruits a lot of families from different countries, and we're seeing a lot of families right now from Micronesia, from Guam. We recently started working with a population of Ukrainian families that just settled in Marshalltown, and also a lot of families from Africa. And I've been working at CAPS for 6 years.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being with us today. I know a lot of people outside of Iowa feel like Iowa is very homogenous demographically, but we are becoming a more and more diverse state all the time. Can you tell us a little bit more? And I'll start with you two from CAPS. Can you tell us a little bit more about the community that you serve and some of the challenges that you see in your community?
The community that we serve. So the majority of the immigrant and refugee population that we serve are usually having the experience of childbirth and delivery and everything that comes along with that for the first time in the United States. We see a lot of families that are very isolated. They don't have a lot of family around or folks that they know. we do see a great majority of them that work locally at the meatpacking plant, but we are also recently have seen a lot of folks coming in with work visas. And so they're coming with a higher education from their home country, but of course, they cannot apply that here. So they are working at the dairy farm or meat packing or what have you. The challenges that we see are probably the same that you see, of course, language barriers, transportation, and just the difficulty in managing the different systems that we have. So, accessing healthcare, for example, is difficult for these families that have to jump through many, many hoops just to, be seen at the doctor's office, school enrollment, everything that comes along with that. So I would say the challenges that we see are probably the same that you all see, not unique to anything that you see. But what we've, I think, done a really great job of is partner very strongly with our local medical providers and our school district, and understanding that we all need to work together and how we can work together more efficiently to serve these families. And I'll let Jasmine speak a little bit with crisis programming that she has. She probably sees a little bit different side of things because she is serving families right when they arrive to Iowa.
Like as he stated, a lot of the families that we do serve are sometimes first-time parents here in the US. And so helping them navigate or connect with prenatal care, and then in general, just with medical care, is sometimes a challenge because care is very different, of course, in every country, and just helping them navigate all of that. A lot of the families that we see, just the language barrier is also a little bit difficult. I was just talking to somebody from the school district, and in Marshalltown, we have a large population of Pacific Islander families who speak Chuukese. And so we've been able to contract with a couple different interpreters within their community to help us when working with those families, but even that sometimes is difficult as they have their own jobs too. But I was talking to somebody from the district, and she was telling me how difficult it was even scheduling interpreters through a language line who speak that language. And just that Des Moines was also having the same difficulty in their school system. And so I think that that's always that can be a big barrier sometimes, especially with some of those languages that are not so easily available with like the language line or within the community with other people. And a lot of the families that we see when they first arrive there, it's helping them navigate everything in the community. So helping them get established with those basic needs like healthcare, housing sometimes, and then understanding everything that goes with that, and connecting them to local resources like the food pantry, school registration, and helping them navigate everything within the school, transportation, and everything that goes along with that. But like as he stated, we do a really good job working with our local community partners. So we partner a lot with the school district, and we get a lot of referrals from the school district, from our local primary healthcare office here in Marshalltown, and do a good job partnering up with them as well. Whether it's scheduling a family to see the doctor or for missing immunizations or whatnot. So I think that's something that we do very well within our community.
Thanks. And Meredith, how about for you? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your community and the type of challenges that you see?
Sure. So a little bit different than what Jasmine was saying. A lot of the participants that we're working with have had children previously. So it's not their first time being pregnant, but the idea of prenatal care is very different for them. And so explaining to them kind of the process in the United States of how you get care for yourself and your baby before the baby is born, and then how it's different at the hospital. just along as well with basic parenting skills. An example that we came across pretty early on is, that physical punishment is okay in a lot of other countries, but it's not necessarily appropriate in the United States. And so explaining to these families that, we respect your culture, we respect how you do things, but in order to not get in trouble with the law in the United States, we're going to have to talk about how to parent in a different way. And just really honoring where the families have come from and helping them to see a different way can be just as effective. I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we've seen multiple times with all the different groups that we have worked with.
Great. So what are some challenges that you're maybe anticipating in your work in the next, 12 plus months? And I'll go back to you, Meredith.
I think the biggest challenge is just continuing to be able to scale up what we're currently doing. A little over a year ago, we added Afghan families to our community. And so we were able to implement them into our current programming, but finding people that could translate for us. And then just starting at the very basics with them about, what is a car seat and why is that important and how to use a car seat. Or even for the parents, what's a seatbelt and how do you use that seatbelt? So finding the continual funding sources to keep that programming available to the new communities has been really, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we've had.
And then Jasmine, for Marshalltown, what are some things that you see on the horizon for challenges in the next short to midterm?
I think a lot of what Meredith said too, just helping provide some of those, like the translation really is the biggest probably barrier that I would say that we would maybe face, especially with the new groups of people coming in to the US, and we'll probably be seeing a lot of them. It seems like Marshalltown is a place that a lot of families settle because of the meatpacking plants and other plants surrounding. And so just, I think that in itself, helping with those language barriers.
Great. And so, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing that I would just add is the continued education of our partners for these different cultures. So it's not uncommon that we receive calls from other agencies within the community asking, we have this family, they speak Chuukese, or for example, we're having a hard time talking to mom, or, about this issue, how should we go about that? And I guess we prefer to get those calls than to hear within the community that other agencies are grouping families together, or for example, years ago we had the same struggle that we're facing now with our Southeast Asian refugee families. So there was a real misunderstanding of different cultural norms. There was a real misunderstanding of, why do they do that? Why do they have that? And so in the past, we've also offered community education. So we have gotten information and education ourselves from the families, and then been able to offer that to other community partners so that they can better serve and understand the population. So I think that's probably something, as we become more diverse, that we are going to probably continue to do, and that there's going to be a need for, is just continuing to share what we know to bridge that gap in understanding within our community.
I definitely think it puts some added complexity into the work when you're not just teaching, parenting skills or helping folks access resources, but you're simultaneously, learning about new cultures, learning about each family and understanding their culture and their specific needs, and then helping them navigate those systems, and also interacting with the community who maybe doesn't have that understanding. Um, a question in the chat. Thanks, Dylan. What resources or services have you used for translation? Wanting to add more languages for flyers and surveys, but unsure about wanting some recommendations for help with multiple languages.
So through CAPS, I think the language company that we go through is AMN, and I could be wrong, and I'm not sure of what the cost is, Ezzy. I don't know if you know a little bit more about that, and that's pretty new too. Sorry. And that's still a little bit new to us too, because before we were just identifying people within the communities that speak that speak English, that are helping translate for some of those community members and connecting with them. And we've been able to contract with them and offer them a job through our agency on an on-needed basis to help with that interpretation. But the language line is something that's pretty new. And Ezzy, I don't know if you have more information on that.
It's pretty pricey, and especially other programs, that are grant funded, finding funds to pay, especially for translation is difficult. We do use a language line, but something that we've done in the past, and others within the state have reached out to us too, is we ourselves have reached out to other human service organizations that we know have someone on staff that speaks the language, and have, way before we needed, giving them plenty of time, but offered, can we offer a donation? Can we pay for your time? We know you have someone on staff that speaks this language. What would you charge us, for translating this survey or this handout, or whatever. The problem that we run into is that a lot of the families that we serve actually speak a dialect. So it's not like Spanish or French that you could use Google Translate and be, pretty accurate with. A lot of the languages are actually dialects. So even the language line does not have them. So we've had to rely on other agencies, again, offering a donation or paying for their time. And we've also identified folks within the families that we're serving that we have gauged, oh, I think this person has a good understanding of the English language. I wonder if they would be willing to just look over something quick for us. Oftentimes within the community, there are leaders within their community. I know when we were first serving our Southeast Asian population, that is who we went through for a lot of the time. So it's usually elders. They call them like their elders within the community. I remember for the Southeast Asian community, it was a pastor who everyone said, oh, he's our leader, he's our elder. So he was someone that they trusted, that they knew. So a lot of our communication are just, we'd like to offer a group. What do you think would be a good topic? What do you think we should meet? Was with this elder that they themselves identified. This is someone we trust. This is someone that is our leader. So that was kind of a natural thing to seek, hey, who's someone that I could talk to within your community? And it was just asking them, really.
Great. The Iowa International Center was also listed in the chat. Thanks, Lori. And then Meredith, have you used any additional or different?
So, like SC was saying, we have found the most luck kind of finding that leader within the community, developing that relationship, and just, starting very basic of what is your community need? How could we be most helpful? And then we develop that relationship. And we've been able to actually hire several people from within the communities themselves to fill those roles. So then they speak the language, they're able to translate stuff for us. Just recently, we have run into needing to use a translation service. And so we have started using Hands Up Communication based in Cedar Rapids. But to have someone go along to like a home visit and do the translation, it's $90 for that 60-minute home visit. So it does get very pricey very quickly. You know, when possible, we just prefer to hire someone within the community who can, you know, be an extension of YPN into that community. And worst case scenario, which is really our last resort, usually if there's an older child in the home, they learn English very quickly from going to school. So if we have to, we can chat with the child and kind of use them as the interpreter. But, you know, it's kind of a roll of the dice whether or not they're translating accurately, especially if it's something that they maybe don't want to hear about changing habits or things within the home.
The children translating. Yeah, they think I need a later bedtime, kind of thing. And then Nancy, thank you. Able to hire a person through HeartCore, helping with communication with the Pacific Islander community and working on some of the forms. That is great. I think we hear success stories all the time about people who have been able to hire from within the communities that they're serving, who have that understanding of the language and some of that cultural understanding as well. I was going to throw out there, we've utilized Midwest translation services for some of our print materials. I would love to have feedback from native speakers about how well they are doing. I mean, they've been great for us to work with, but I also, I don't understand the language that they've translated some of the materials in, or I'm not a native speaker. So, I think they've done a good job. I would recommend them, but I also would love to get feedback from native speakers for some of those documents. I feel like we've kind of touched on some of this already, but I wanted to ask about engagement with community partners and how have you engaged with other partners in the community? And Meredith, I'll go to you because Essie already had touched on this a little bit, but wanted to get your take on it.
So we have CMC here in Cedar Rapids, and they're one of the resettlement agencies in Iowa. And so it's been a great partnership. CMC understands that their contract is only for so long, but they know that families typically need more resources than what they can provide during that time. So we've kind of become part of their intake process, and we're just one of the stops that they go to. They say, this is what YPN can offer you. And we just start working with those families right away and seeing how we can help them. So maybe a lot of services right at the beginning. They're working with CMC, YPN is jumping in right away. They're getting, their primary care doctors. But then things start to slow down and we've got that continued relationship with those families that's ongoing.
And then Essie or Jasmine, I know you kind of talked about some of the community partners you've worked with, but I didn't know if you wanted to expand on that or provide any examples of some specific agencies that have been particularly beneficial partners.
We have a long relationship years back with our local low-income clinic, primary health care. So as with Meredith's example, we also are part of their intake process for any new appointment, particularly for pregnant women. So they fill out what we call a risk assessment for us. So if families are interested, they're providing a little bit of background for us. And then they sign a release and we are able to contact them. And we just make it a habit yearly to check in with the school district, for example, to sit in on their all staff meetings and just remind everyone of the services that we provide so they can make those referrals directly. We have a good partnership with other medical providers here in town, and recently have established a better relationship with JBS. So we went out and met with them, informed them of what services we can provide. And so they now are making those referrals directly to us, which is beneficial to both, both sides there. If there's others that you can think of, Jasmine.
I think that you've touched on all of them. The local clinic, the WIC office, the school district, and like as he said, every year touching base with every agency that might come in contact with some of these families and just reminding them of our services so they're able to send them our way if there's any needs. And establishing a strong relationship with the school social workers or resource officers, um, so that they are a lot of times the people that are kind of meeting with the families when there's issues or concerns that come up. And so just checking in with them on a regular basis to remind them of our services.
And then as far as like engaging with families and being successful at developing relationships with families, what do you think has been particularly helpful? And I'll start with CAPS.
I think just asking goes a long way. And as Meredith said, identifying a couple families on your caseload that you feel you can approach and ask. And I know we've just had to say, hey, tell me about having a baby in your country. What is that like? What, discipline, what do you do for that? It's, I think, important for relationship building to be aware and know and understand their culture, so that you know in what way you can offer the information or how you're needing to go, about it. The example that Meredith used, we come across that situation often, but it's important to know where they are coming from so that you're not offending anyone, you're providing the information that you need to provide, but you're continuing to build that trust. And so oftentimes, that's what we've done is we've identified families that we feel we can ask, and we've just asked. I think just asking goes a long way. And I think for the families, um, it just continues to build that relationship. Asking those leaders, those identified leaders within the community. Oftentimes for us, it seems like with particular populations, identifying like a pastor, a local pastor or a church that they go to, because that's their safe space, that's where they feel comfortable. And so we've done a lot of outreach with local pastors. For example, we are working with our local Chin community, our Chin pastor. He approached us. He is wanting us to go to the church to provide some information on sexual abuse prevention because they had a situation within their community. So we are meeting with him in his home, talking about what they're needing, what they're wanting, because we know we can go in there and provide whatever, but we want to do that in a sensitive manner to their culture. So I think honestly, just asking, just making those connections, identifying who those people are within the community, goes a long ways.
Great. And then Meredith, how would you say YPN has been successful in building relationships with families and partners?
So I think it's, like was previously said, just approaching each family individually and asking those questions in a sensitive manner. Can you tell me more about how you were brought up? Can you tell me about your culture? We brought in someone from ISU who was familiar with the Muslim culture right before we started working with our Afghan families, so that everybody kind of had a baseline knowledge of this doesn't necessarily apply to every family we're going to be working with, but these are key things to keep in mind and to be sensitive of, so that we're not making big social faux pas as we're meeting this new group of individuals. And then asking those questions as you meet each family, because one family may believe one thing or expect one thing, where another family may be more conservative and want something very different. So approaching it with, humility and, can you help me understand your family situation better?
I love that you added that. It's great to have some of that baseline information, but knowing, having the expectation that this may or may not apply. And, you know, we've got a lot of every family is different. Their needs are different. Their values are different, and understanding that this may not apply to everybody, I think is helpful as well. Um, Next question, I guess, what what do you think is important to add to this topic? And Meredith, I'll start with you. Maybe what did I not ask, or what have we not touched on that you want to share with the group?
Gosh, I don't know. I think being lifelong learners is just really important for all of us. No matter what community you're working with, there's always something to learn. Even if it's, someone that looks like you and speaks the same language as you, there's something about that family that you maybe don't understand. So just asking those questions, as you meet with new families, to make sure that you're approaching it from a sensitive point of view and not offending someone.
Okay.
I think going along with that, helping educate your community too, because we are the ones that are with these families probably the most and spending the most time with them as we're in their home. And so I know that that's a lot of what we've had to do, helping educate. A little while ago, we provided some education to like the police department, the sheriff's department, and a lot of other professionals in the community about the African culture and just differences within their culture, but again, just helping them understand a little bit about them and their culture and their norms. So just helping educate those around you too, because more than likely, they might not know very much about the culture. And as you're in the home a lot, you get to learn more, asking those questions and getting to know the family, and then taking it upon yourself also to kind of do some of that research or want to learn more.
Great.
I just wanted to comment on that. I think, Jasmine hit it right on. Finding that common place for them to get together. I know at our group parenting programs, we've brought in like the police department, so that it was an open communication. The families were able to ask questions. The police officers were able to ask questions, and it just showed that it didn't have to be a scary dynamic, that there was lots of just misunderstandings. And, just because the police officer comes up behind you with his lights on doesn't mean that in their home country, that meant speed away. Whereas here in the United States, it means you need to stop and just have that conversation. And it could be something super simple. So just getting people in the same room to have those conversations, it's a great point.
That's great. Well, I'm going to take a quick pause and see if anybody has any questions so far. I'm not seeing anything. I did see something in the chat, Kids Forever. And I don't know if if that's a language resource, or if that's been a resource somebody is, oh, okay. Or anybody else, any attendees that have encountered a resource that has been particularly helpful in your communities, whether it's language related or helping for system navigation, navigating different cultures. Okay. Well, in terms of, things that, moving forward, things that would be helpful for you, what are you still, what do you still think is a challenge that you have, or maybe a resource scarcity? I know, Meredith, you're in Lynn County, which is one of our bigger areas in Iowa, and Jasmine and Ezzy, you're in Marshalltown, which is, a little bit smaller. How do you balance or leverage resources in a smaller, more rural community?
Because we are in a smaller community, I think a lot of our resources are um, have to be almost non-traditional. So, for example, transportation, the age-old barrier, right, to everyone. We're working with a few just volunteers and churches that we've connected with, who are willing to provide transportation to appointments. We don't have, families cannot deliver their babies in Marshalltown, so they have to, minimum it's an hour away. Some families qualify for Medicaid transportation, a lot don't for many reasons. So that's a huge barrier. So we often cannot rely on or count on for our families on typical state resources and or even just other local resources because they cannot qualify for them, they cannot access them for whatever reason. So we've had to rely on our community and kind of go at it at a different route. So that's one quick example is just thinking outside the box. How can we work together? Who can we call? Who is someone in the community that has helped in the past? Would they be willing to help? I don't know. Let's call and ask. So we work a lot with our local churches, with just volunteers that we've come across in our work.
We found too that as the community, as participants have been in the community longer, they're willing to kind of step up and take more of those leadership roles. So an example is we have a group every Thursday night, and we don't always have enough transportation, but our African community has really developed their own sense of community and really strengthen those relationships. And so they'll be like, oh, we don't need the bus, so and so is going to pick me up. And so they really start to step up, even if they haven't been in that traditional leadership role, to help out the other people who speak their language and they've, really kind of bonded to as family here within the United States, to make sure that everybody's getting to where they need to be, whether it's the doctor's appointments or the parenting class, or, I work first shift and you work second shift, so will you take my kids to school and then I'll pick the kids up from school. They've really learned kind of how to navigate some of those after they've been in the United States for a little bit.
That's awesome. Those are great examples of, I think, building that community of support where, even if a specific resource goes away, it's kind of a sustainable thing, right? Those, I call them natural supports, but, if funding gets cut or a service goes away, that those supports will still, potentially be there because they just exist naturally in the community. I see a comment, public library offering one night a month for Pacific Islanders to come and practice English. Definitely, that's a great resource for continuing that that learning and those English skills. Thanks, Nancy. Any other? Sorry, I'm checking the chat box. I guess as we close, I just wanted to ask both groups kind of what gives you hope as you look to the future of your work. And I'll start with you, Meredith.
I think what gives me hope the most is when we're able to bring together all of our participants with all their diverse backgrounds. We do that a couple of times a year just to have celebrations. And it's wonderful to see the communication and the camaraderie between the different groups. You see all of the children of the different backgrounds playing together, and language isn't an issue. It's just really hopeful to see the communities kind of blending and figuring out how to communicate with each other, even if they don't have that common language, because parenting is a common theme across all backgrounds.
To piggyback on that, I think there's always going to be negative comments and negative things within your community, but the positive, I think, far outweighs that. And it's been great for us to receive a comment just unexpectedly. Oh, you're doing so much great work. Thank you for helping these families out. How do you need any volunteers for anything? How can I help these families out? We've had a lot of just individuals within our community just reach out and just say, do you need help with anything? How can I volunteer? And that's great to see that there are those in the community, a lot of folks in the community willing to help, willing to embrace their new neighbors and wanting to learn more. So that's always hopeful when you can see that within the community. There are those wanting to open their hearts to their new neighbors. So that's always nice.
Going along with that, like as you stated, I've seen a lot of other individuals in the community who maybe weren't aware of all the work that we were doing with newer families, and some way or another they've been connected to groups of people who have come, and so offering, like as you stated, their services, their time to volunteer, their time to come to help transport families, or to even get to know them a little bit better, and helping them. And so that's always hopeful, and helping families that are new to the community just transition easier, and just being there for them.
Awesome. And thanks, Val. She put in the chat, a Corby is a language service that ISU Extension has used. Some of these resources I've not heard of, so that is great. These are great resources. Well, I definitely want to thank you for being here and being a part of this conversation. I think sometimes, like you said, Ezzy, just thinking outside the box about how do we meet the need if there's a limited resource, or, not a specific service, just kind of helps to get together and kick around ideas and learn from one another. I do want to go back to attendees and see if anybody has anything that has come out in their community that's been a really great partnership or resource or idea. I don't want to put anybody in particular on the spot, but maybe this has jogged something in your mind that you want to share. All right, not seeing anything. Panelists, anything else that before we close that you want to make sure you share with everybody? Okay, well, we can end a little bit early. I want to say thank you to you three for being here and talking about your work. Two great examples of phenomenal work that's going on across the state, where organizations have been really creative and worked very hard to understand and meet the needs of the people in their community. The work we do is definitely, can be challenging at times, and then, can be made even more so when you've got language barriers or, cultural issues, things like that, people having to navigate situations and a lot of challenges, and being able to overcome that and really meet those needs in a way that values families and their experiences and what's important to them. So I want to say thank you for your work and for sharing this information with us all. I will be posting this recording to